So many closed-back headphones sound boxy and unnatural. This one didn't. This one did though. Confused? Let me explain what's going on and tell you why this one is better than both of those. It was December 2024, nearly Christmas. I'd just received the SJY Audio Horizon closed-back carbon headphones. These are a collaboration project between Apos Audio and a one-man headphone design company in SJY Audio. They sounded good, impressive for a closed-back and generally enjoyable. I loved their staging, but I didn't love their tonality quite so much. Fast forward to very early January of 2025, and I was on a video call with members of the Apos Audio team and Jeff, the designer of the Horizon closed carbons. We talked about what I liked about them, what I didn't like about them, and what might be the cause of that. I've had communication like this with companies before. Sometimes the feedback gets acted upon, sometimes it's just a placatory process to make a reviewer feel good. I suspected Jeff would implement some of the changes, but time would tell. Instead, Jeff emailed me with a proposed modification. I tried it and it worked a treat, so I let Jeff and the Apos team know that they were onto an absolute winner. 2 weeks went by and a new pair of Horizon closed carbons arrived. I'm going to call them the carbons from now on. I eagerly unpacked them and plugged them in for a listen. Only they sounded worse. These were not the headphones that I'd imagined based on the conversations with Jeff and what I'd heard after doing the modification he proposed. Back to the emails. It turns out that the second carbon was still a prototype. I didn't know that at the time though. Phew. But this raised other concerns. You know how some people just can't help but to continue to tweak and adjust something? I began to wonder if Jeff would ever land a final tuning of the carbons. Would the carbons keep swinging this way and that? Or even worse, would I share a review with you only to discover that there was a brand new revision of its tuning coming in just a couple of months? And then Zeos dropped a review of the carbons. He loved them, but he also talked about Jeff's propensity to continue to adjust the sound. Uh-oh. Well, fear not, friends, because this is the final version of the carbons. This is the same one that Zeos reviewed in late January of 2025, and this is the version that you'll receive if you choose to buy one. And this is one of the 2 best closed-back headphones that I've heard anywhere near the price. For $1,099 US or $999 if you pre-order, hint, you should pre-order, the carbons are a closed-back planar magnetic headphone that sounds so unclosed. It's phenomenal. They use an 11 ohm planar magnetic driver that's a little bit power hungry and quite current hungry, so they might not be ideal with small dongles. In fact, I'm going to say they're not going to be ideal with small dongles, but with beefier portables like an X-Duo XD05T or XD05 Pro or a Chord Mojo 2, you'll be loving the results. And with desktop gear, they're even better. Before I expand on the sound quality, I should talk a bit about the build and comfort. I know that some of you don't like the look of these, but I dig them. Jeff said he deliberately chose the rectangular design to make them different from everything else, and I'm all for that. Who wants everything to look the same and boring? I mean, if nothing else, you'll remember the look of these. Hopefully, you'll also fall in love with their looks because of their sound. And then there's the comfort. The carbons aren't a light headphone, but Jeff took some feedback from the original prototype sent out to some of the reviewers, and he's made some changes that have paid off. You can feel when these are on your head that they're not a super light headphone, but they are a very comfortable headphone. So Jeff, thanks for making the changes. Something else that Jeff changed along the way was, well, everything. The design process of the Horizon closed-back carbon has been a veritable odyssey. Jeff described to me on our call in early January how he'd revised pretty much every part of the carbons multiple times, dozens of times, before arriving at a finished version. That means dozens of cup design iterations, dozens of driver changes, pad changes, damping changes. You name it, it's probably changed multiple times since the inception of the carbon. Thankfully though, what hasn't changed is Jeff's vision for its sound. That initial prototype that impressed me with its sound was true to the vision, but not quite there yet. This version that I'm holding now, this is the Sonic Vision brought to life. The carbons deliver a great sense of clarity on the kalimba in Prince Eugene, and the saxophone has wonderful tone and texture. The most impressive thing about the carbons tuning is that everything is balanced beautifully across the entire frequency range. The bass is tactile, but listening to Prince Eugene is kind of secondary in the mix, and I think that's how it's meant to be based on the track. The thing that continually impresses me about the carbons though, is they just do not sound closed. They're more like an intimate open back headphone in the sense that the soundstage isn't expansive the way some open backs can be, but there's none of that boxy closed in feeling that you get from most closed backs. Switching to another king of closed backs in my opinion, in the Sony MDR Z1R, reveals a headphone that is less tonally balanced than the carbons. At twice the price, the Z1Rs can't match the carbons for their tonal accuracy. The Sonys do deliver greater resolution and a slightly larger soundstage, so it's not all one-sided, and the Sonys do justify their significantly higher price tag in a number of ways, just not in tonal balance and not always in ways that people are going to enjoy more than the carbons. The Sony's treble is a touch spicier than the carbons, which some of you will find exciting, others of you will find fatiguing. What's pretty clear to me though after spending time with both is that both are wonderful headphones, but I don't see any sonic reason that I could tell you that the Sonys are worth twice the price of the carbons. The carbons are just that good at their price. On the Z1R, Daily Blues is crunchy and gritty. The separation of sounds is as good as can be expected on a track like this, especially on closed-back headphones, but it's still a busy sounding track. The vocal tonality is excellent from the Z1Rs here, and all of the sounds are well articulated in amongst a crunchy and noisy mix. And then along come the carbons. These deliver more weight through the upper bass, and it gives a greater sense of presence and body to the sound. They're not thick sounding though. The carbons place a bit less emphasis on the crunch and the grit, but it is all still there. They just deliver a richer, fuller sound through the mid-range when compared to the more V-shaped Sonys. I actually think the carbons are closer to reality in that sense, more like what you would hear in a live acoustic performance. I also think it makes the carbons more consistently enjoyable across any sort of system and any sort of track. They're more of a chameleon in that way. The Sonys can sound a little bit less enjoyable on some source chains and some tracks. Classical lovers will want to note that the carbons are also excellent on orchestral recordings. However, this is where the Sonys do pull ahead a bit, and that's thanks to their slightly brighter top end and their greater overall sense of resolution. The Sonys bring a bit more sense of attack to the strings, and it creates a bit more energy and excitement from orchestral recordings. Again, the carbons are far from bad, they're wonderful, but lovers of a crisper, more textured orchestral sound will be rewarded by spending more, maybe twice as much more, on something like the Sonys. So I said earlier that the carbons are one of the two best closed-back headphones anywhere near their price. The Sonys aren't near their price, so that leaves one other headphone to talk about, and it's the ZMF Bokeh, the Bokeh closed. As to which one you should choose, that's a bit tricky to answer because I don't have the Bokehs here. What I can tell you though is that the carbons are clearly a more neutral tuning. The Bokehs have some very tasteful coloration to their sound. From memory, I'd say that the carbons are the more spacious and open sounding headphone of the two. I didn't mention this before, but this is also something that makes the carbons an insanely good gaming headphone. But going beyond that, you'll have to decide if you prefer the more traditionally shaped Bokeh with its wooden cups that are mostly round, or if you prefer the more unique and retro looking carbons with their rectangular aluminium housings and carbon fibre cups. And yes, that is real carbon fibre. What I can say for sure here though is that both the Horizon closed carbons and the ZMF Bokeh closed are incredibly good headphones, and they've ended something of a drought of finding decent, good quality, but not crazy expensive closed-back headphones. And so I've put a link in the description down below where you can go and pick up the Horizon closed-back carbons for yourself. And remember, they're on pre-order at the time I'm releasing this, which means you can get them for $100 off at $999. Otherwise, they'll be $1,099 later on. And to keep it really simple, at $999, the carbons are absolutely nuts. However, if you're not sure yet, check out my video up here on the ZMF Bokehs, because they're really the only other competition for the carbons in my opinion. For now though, I want to send a huge thanks to YouTube channel members, a huge thanks to channel Patreon members, and of course to those of you who leave super thanks on videos like this one. And until next time, happy listening, be kind to each other, and I'll see you here again soon on Passion for Sound.